The movie opens as we meet two Mormon missionary girls named Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes. They are on a mission to spread their faith and convert as many people as possible. Paxton is worried because she has not been able to convert a single person during her time as a missionary. Barnes, on the other hand, appears more confident, since she has already managed to convert 8 people. The two young women then go around town trying to spread their message, but no one is interested in hearing them. Sometime later, it begins to rain, and the two go over their list of people to visit. They soon arrive at the home of a man who had shown prior interest in the Mormon religion. They lock their bicycles outside and knock on the door, to which an elderly man named Mr. Reed answers. He warmly greets them, and Paxton begins to recite the speech she has memorized, but Reed notices the rain and invites them into the house after mentioning that his wife is inside. Upon entering, the girls hand their rain-soaked coats to the old man. After leaving them in the living room, Reed goes to the kitchen and returns with 2 sodas and a candle. He mentions that his wife is very shy and is currently making blueberry pie in the kitchen. The girls, who can smell the pie, say she should also be in the room, so Reed assures them that she will arrive shortly. Up next, Reed asks them about their personal lives. They answer very cheerfully, and Paxton even reveals that she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly just to follow around the people she loves. But then, the old man suddenly asks an uncomfortable question about their views on polygamy. The girls are clearly opposed, so Reed claims that Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, initiated sexual relationships with multiple women, resulting in the practice of polygamy. He claims that Smith encouraged other Mormon men to have multiple wives as well. Therefore, Reed believes that the entire foundation of this religion is riddled with brainwashing. Amidst this conversation, Barnes asks about his wife, so Reed says he will go find her. After he leaves the room, Barnes examines the lit candle, and is shocked to discover that the aroma of blueberry pie is coming from it, rather than the kitchen. But before she can tell her friend, the old man returns and asks them to follow him inside, where his wife awaits them. But before they enter, Barnes pretends to receive a phone call from her superior, so Reed gives them some time. Barnes then anxiously tells Paxton that they should leave, as she has sensed something strange about the man. The two proceed to the front door, but soon remember that the key to their bicycles is in Barnes' coat. Regardless, they attempt to open the front door. But it is also locked, and they cannot open it no matter how hard they try. The girls also try to call someone from the church, but the director decides not to include a signal in this situation. At this moment, the lights suddenly go off, and with no choice, the girls decide to find Reed and ask for his help. They walk down a dark hallway, and soon arrive at a study room with 2 further doors, where they find the old man. The girls explain that their superior called and asked them to return to the church. Hearing this, Reed happily agrees to let them go, and returns their coats. However, the girls are shocked to discover that the bicycle key is not in Barnes' pocket but in Paxton's. Regardless, they decide to leave and ask the old man to open the front door. But he shockingly reveals that it's not possible because the locks are on a timer, and won't unlock until the next morning. The only way out is through a back door. Of course, the girls are now filled with horror, and are unsure of what to do. Even worse, Reed suddenly tells them not to lie, as he knows that no one actually called them. He reveals that the roof and walls of the house are covered with metal, which blocks any network signal. Frustrated, Barnes points at the 2 doors, and asks which one leads outside, but Reed doesn't give her a clear answer. Paxton then asks him to bring his wife, so she can accompany them on the way out. In response, Reed says that they have already noticed the scented candle and no oven with a pie. But they still think that his wife exists, just as they continue to believe in God, only because it was instilled in them since childhood. Upon hearing this, both girls are deeply frightened, and Barnes opens the 2 doors in the study room. But to her disappointment, both of them lead to a dark basement, and not outside. Elsewhere, at the Mormon church, a minister named Kennedy is about to call it a day. But when he reviews the daily log and notices that Barnes and Paxton still haven't returned, he becomes really worried. Returning to the house, the creepy man begins to talk about his views on the world's religions. He explains that, according to the facts, the major monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Mormonism, all derive from the same source material in various forms. Reed then states that Judaism should be regarded as the original, as it is the root of all these religions. But only 0.2% of the world's population now practices Judaism, while its copy religions have huge amounts of followers. He reveals that this is because Judaism doesn't advertise its God, and has no publicity strategies, unlike other religious groups. Reed also claims that these girls are nothing more than salespeople trying to sell a product. After this, Reed writes belief and disbelief on 2 doors, and challenges the girls to choose one to leave. Paxton tries to enter the disbelief door, but Barnes stops her, and says the choice doesn't matter because he won't let them go. Barnes then chooses to enter the belief door instead, and Paxton also follows her. They ask Reed if he isn't coming, but he simply shuts the door on them. The girls soon arrive at a dark basement, with only a table and a fold-out chair in the room. Barnes moves the table, and places the chair on top to try to reach a high window. But, when they hear the door above the stairs open, they quickly return the furniture to their original positions. Barnes then hands Paxton a letter opener that she had taken from Reed's study, asking her to use it on the man if he tries to hurt them. Moments later, someone arrives at the basement, and they think it's Reed. But it turns out to be a barefoot woman, dressed in a dirty robe and looking decrepit. The woman places a pie on a table, and begins to convulse on the floor without saying anything. Meanwhile, Reed begins speaking with the girls through the speakers installed in the basement. He explains that this woman is a prophet of God, and today they are going to witness a miracle. Soon, the woman begins eating the pie, and Reed reveals that it is poisoned and she will die soon. The girls are shocked, but Reed reveals that the woman will soon be resurrected due to the power of God. Barnes and Paxton then watch in horror as the woman collapses on the ground and passes away. Afterward, Reed orders them to examine her condition. The girls nervously check her pulse and breath, and eventually determine that she has died. However, Reed is very confident that she will return soon, and will tell them what she saw in the afterlife. At this moment, the doorbell suddenly rings, and Reed goes to answer the door. After the man leaves, the girls begin screaming at the top of their lungs, but their cries do not reach the front door. Meanwhile, outside the house, we see that it is Kennedy standing in the snowstorm. Kennedy asks if he has seen the church girls, who were supposed to visit him, but the old man responds that he hasn't seen them and that they didn't show up at his place. On the other hand, the girls watch through the small gap underneath the locked door of the basement and notice a matchbox on the rug. They decide to set fire to the rug, hoping that the smoke will alert the minister. Outside, Mr. Kennedy apologizes for bothering Reed and decides to leave, while Reed watches him. Back in the basement, the girls manage to reach the matchbox. But when the girls get down the stairs, Paxton notices that the woman's body has moved slightly from its original position, but Barnes brushes her off and focuses on trying to light the matches. Unfortunately, Barnes struggles to light the matches. And then this happens. The dead woman suddenly appears and starts throwing up. The woman suddenly explains what she saw on the other side, and ends with the phrase, "It's not real." Just then, Reed also arrives at the basement and pulls her away from the girls. He tells them that the words they have just heard are sacred, and will be written in holy books. Next, Reed urges the girls that they can also die, and experience what lies beyond life. He claims that it will give them definitive answers to all the mysteries of human existence. However, Barnes argues that what the woman saw was only a hallucination brought on by a near-death experience. She explains that when she was a child, she got sick after food poisoning, and was declared clinically dead. At that time, she also saw all the things the woman described, before finally coming back to life. After saying this, she hints Paxton to begin the attack. But before Paxton can proceed, Reed suddenly slits Barnes' throat with a knife. The sight terrifies Paxton, and she begins to frantically bang on the door, while screaming for help. However, the old man calmly watches her, and tells her not to be afraid. He claims that Barnes will come back to life any moment, just like the earlier woman. Soon, a few minutes pass, but the girl still doesn't revive, so Reed cuts open her right arm, and removes a metal object from inside her. He then shows it to Paxton, and claims that it is a microchip, claiming that Barnes is not a real person, but a computer program inserted into this simulation. Reed explains that this is why Barnes cannot be resurrected. He goes on to say that this world is a simulation and that the only way to get to the real world is through death, and encourages Paxton to live herself. However, Paxton thinks that the metal object is actually a birth control implant. She then begins to explain how the entire resurrection thing was just a ruse created by Reed. Being a keen observer, Paxton points out that, While they were distracted by the minister's arrival, a second woman dressed identically to the deceased woman emerged from a hidden door. This woman took the dead one's place and recited a script written by Reed. However, the woman improvised a phrase that was not planned and said, "It's not real." Thus, Reed's murder of Barnes, as well as his attempt to persuade Paxton of a simulated reality, are all improvised to cover up his failed plan. After saying this, Paxton begins looking for hidden doors throughout the basement, and eventually finds one, which leads to another cellar. Reed warns her not to go in there, unless she is prepared to find the one true religion. Despite everything that has happened, the girl decides to proceed, as she wants to find out the truth. She then descends a shaft to the bottom, where she discovers a woman's corpse, proving her theory correct. During this, Reed shuts the door, and Paxton uses her cell phone's light to continue walking deeper. She starts to explore the tunnels, and finds many doors and rooms filled with occult symbols and signs of satanic practices. Soon, she discovers a door locked with their bicycle padlock, and finds the key to it inside her pocket. After unlocking the door, she is horrified to discover this. She discovers a cold storage room filled with weak women imprisoned in small cages. At this moment, Reed arrives and asks Paxton if she understands what the one true religion really is. In response, Paxton explains that when he left them alone in the living room, he went outside to get their bicycles, so they would not be discovered if someone came looking for them. They also thought he had put the key in the wrong pocket, but he did so on purpose, because he had everything planned to get her to where she is now. Paxton reveals that she didn't choose to be here. She explains that he wanted her to know that the only reason she's standing there right now is because it's exactly where he wants her to be standing. Thus, she has finally discovered the only true religion, which is control. Upon hearing this, the old man is impressed, and admits that she is right. He claims that none of these women are here against their will, rather, their own beliefs and decisions have brought them to this point. After that, he cuts one of the woman's fingers as a punishment for going off script earlier. The sight makes Paxton cry. And when the psycho begins yapping about religions, she seizes the opportunity to stab him with the letter opener Barnes gave her earlier. Paxton dashes through the underground corridors, climbing a staircase, until she finally reaches the study room. She barricades the door with a table, but soon realizes that all of the doors in the house are locked. In the end, she concludes that the only way out is to go downstairs and find an exit. But unfortunately, as soon as Paxton reaches the basement, Reed stabs her in the stomach. They both collapse to the ground, injured. Reed, with his last remaining strength, asks her to pray for them. Paxton responds that praying won't change anything, but she admits that there is something beautiful about thinking of others and being kind. Following this, she eventually begins to pray, and Reed crawls across the floor and leans on her chest while crying. Here, Reed raises his knife to finish her, but then someone pierces his head with a wooden plank with nails. It turns out to be Barnes, who is still alive and has managed to kill the sadistic man. But sadly, she also collapses, and soon dies in the arms of her friend. In the aftermath of this incident, Paxton crawls upstairs and comes across a prototype of the place. She examines it and discovers an escape route through an air duct. Paxton goes through it, and finally leaves the wretched house after hours of torture. As she walks through the forest, a butterfly lands on her hand. This reminds Paxton of a wish she made. If she were reincarnated, she would return as a butterfly and land on her loved one's hand. It then vanishes, leaving Paxton alone in the snowy landscape.